Once upon a time, there was an unhappy family. Their neighbors were being unhappy too. Just because of their quarrels sound. Even everyone tries to avoid going through at front of their house. Mrs. Selma's elder son has married recently. And the quarrel had begun after that. Her name was Sweetie, who just got married to Mrs. Salam's sons. Sweetie's marital life was in danger. And she desperately wanted to get rid of it. Once Sweetie got news there's a monk beside the mountain. Can help her. Very next day Mrs. Sweetie went to the monk and said, "Oh dear monk, please help me. My mother-in-law doesn't like me. Whatever I tried for best she finds out a fault in it. She always try to create conflict with my husband. That's why my husband doesn't like me as before." She was just continuously saying his problem. Then the monk replied, "Stop, I have understood your problems." The monk gives her some mixer, as like salt, and said, "You have to eat a pinch of it in the morning after wake up. After eating this, you can talk for just 10 times in a day. Otherwise it will stop working." Mrs. Sweetie came back happily because her problems go into end now. But she was unaware of the difficulty of this task. Very next day, as the monk said, Mrs. Sweetie after taking the medicine went to make some breakfast for all. Her mother-in-law and husband woke up and came for breakfast. In every dish were oversalted. Because she had eaten much more salt, so she hasn't felt the salt. And oversalted. Her mother-in-law felt first than his husband. And they shouted together on Mrs. Sweetie, as the monk said, so she hasn't argued, like this day. Every day she was doing similar mistakes and keeps a quiet when they rap out on her. After some days her husband and mother-in-law, instead of shouting, started loving her so much. So Mrs. Sweetie went to thanks the monk again. And sad that his mother-in-law and husband love her so much now and asked what was the problem. The monk replied, "The problem was your argument and the solution was some salt and regulation to stop your tongue."